How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another Skyrim comparison video. This one might be the longest one I've done so far, or it might be a quite short one. But I got a feeling this is going to be a pretty long one, because this is going to be a pretty in-depth topic. And quite one that people really wonder about. What is the best race to play as in Skyrim? No role-playing taken into account, no like aesthetics, purely based off objective like stats and stuff that you can objectively measure. What is the best race to play as? What will give you the best advantages and have the best overall play experience? So I actually thought about this a lot, like over the course of my many years of playing the game. I've been playing since I was like 12, back in like 2014, something like that. And I've really been, well, I guess I was 10 in 2014. I've been playing for a very long time is my point. And I could never really decide. So I sat down and I really thought about it. I listed out everything, that's every advantage, every disadvantage. I made a conscious note of which ones I play most often. And the answer is there is no one best race in Skyrim. At the end of the video, for fun, I will try to decide which one is the best. But what is the best race in Skyrim is kind of a wrong question. It's more like, what is the 3 best races? Because there's 3 types of way you can play the game. As a warrior type, a mage type, or a thief type. And there's obviously sort of different there's lots and lots of subclasses that don't fall directly on each one of those 3. This kind of crossover. But generally, you're going to be either magic oriented, combat oriented, or stealth oriented. So which race is best for each 3? That's the question we're going to be answering, and then at the end, for fun, I'll decide which one is the best out of all of them. So let's just start off with the Argonian, because that's the one at the top of my little list. So every race has passive effects. It can be 1, it can be 2, I think even the orc has none, but the race's passive effects and the power they have built in is very important. So Argonian, we're starting out with the stealth races, by the way. Argonians have the passive effect to always be able to breathe underwater infinitely long without ever taking damage or drowning. That's kind of cool, but in Skyrim, there's very few situations you would ever be underwater, just for the sake that Bethesda would never put time into doing that. You know, it would be so cool if they did, but the main times you're going to be going underwater is when you're at like a shipwreck up in the north, and there might be like a treasure chest hidden. In those situations, it does help to be Argonian, I'm not gonna lie, it really helps, but with a little bit of foresight, you can use a water breathing potion, or you could just have really high HP and just hope for the best, or you could just chug health potions as you're drowning. There is other options. The other active effect Argonians have is a 50% resistance to disease, which is actually so amazing. It is so annoying when you're just starting an adventure, you're just leaving the city, and right as you fucking leave, a wolf attacks you and you get rock joint. I hate getting diseases in this game, and they're not super often, granted, but they do happen often enough that it's annoying, especially if you're playing on survival mode and you have to pay to buy a potion of cure disease or pay to pray at a shrine to get rid of it. It's so annoying. So cutting the often-ness that you get a disease by 50% is really good in my opinion. Argonians also have a ability known as Hist Skin. Once a day, you can use this to regenerate health 10 times faster than you normally would for 60 seconds. On any difficulty, that's extremely good, especially on higher difficulties. That helps so much in very tight situations. If you're fighting a bandit chief with a couple other bandits around, that can make a lot of problems go away. And it saves money on health potions. Now, Argonians are sounding very strong, but let's get to their starting stats. Every race has 5 favored skills and 1 primary skill. So what that means, every skill in the game starts out at 15. For example, smithing, heavy armor block, 2-handed, 1-handed, so on. They all start at 15, but every race has 5 that start at 20, and 1 that starts at 25. So that is important, because if you're playing as a mage, you would probably want to have destruction at level 25, because you would unlock certain abilities much more quickly. You get the idea. So, the favored skills for the Argonian is light armor, sneak, pickpocket, restoration, and alteration, and the primary skill is lock picking. Funnily enough, this is kind of a little bit of trivia that a lot of the OG people will know. If you lockpick every lock within Helgen Keep, you will always level up lockpicking at least 1 time. The Argonian is the only race that you cannot level up lockpicking from the locks in Helgen Keep without intentionally breaking locks, because they start at such a high lockpicking level that you physically cannot get enough XP. Which is kind of funny, because you normally would get that little level up, and that'd be a nice XP boost towards level 2, but the Argonians don't have that. I think that's kind of funny. Now, talking about the fact that the Argonians are one of the 3 stealth races, I find it very interesting that they have Restoration and Alteration as favored skills, and they also have, you know, Pickpocket, Sneak, and Light Armor. This also means that Argonians don't have any strictly combat/damage oriented skills at level 20. You know, one-handed, two-handed, and destruction and archery, all of these are at level 15, which, depending on the way you look at it, is either really good or really bad. Yes, the fact that they start really low is bad, because it means you don't have as much access to perks very often, but you do level them up a little bit more often, because they start off at a lower level, meaning you get a bit more XP if you use, you know, one-handed or two-handed. That's kind of cool, I guess. Now, Argonian, it's kind of a bastardization of a mage and a thief. It doesn't seem to really know what it wants to be, aside from bad. Like, let's be honest, like I said, water breathing, not a good active effect. Lockpicking at 25? Really bad. That's really bad. The Hist Skin ability and the Resist Disease is so good, but the starting abilities are really bad. And the fact that they have Restoration and Alteration, it's kind of alright, I guess. If you want to use, like, daggers and oak flesh, or daggers and, you know, Restoration, it's kind of cool. It could be an interesting way of playing the game, but I think most people who choose an Argonian choose Argonian for the aesthetic and not for any of the specific abilities that they have. Anyways, moving on to the second stealth-based race, being the Khajiit. The Khajiit have one active effect, being that they do 15 damage with their claws. I think the normal base damage for, you know, your fists is 1, but for Khajiit it's 15, which, if you really take into account what starting weapons are in the game, like, let's take into account the Iron Sword, 8 damage. Let's take into account Steel Sword, 9. Dwarven War Axe is, I think, 11 damage. You would probably have to level up a decent bit to actually outperform the Khajiit's claws, which is kind of funny. Granted, you don't get XP for doing unarmed damage, so it's not really something you'd want to use much. Maybe if you come across like a Spriggan at the beginning of the game, that would be a good way to quickly win the fight. The Khajiit power that they have is Night Eye, which grants you 60 seconds of improved night vision. In my experience, maybe I'm just a little bit biased, but in my experience, the game doesn't get so dark very often. Like, even at night and even in caves, it's pretty easy to see. Granted, it helps, but it doesn't help that much, and I don't need the help that much too, if you know what I mean. Night vision, something that's good, I just don't use, because I personally, in my biased opinion, I don't like it. Their 5 favored stats is one-handed and archery, lockpicking, pickpocket, and alchemy, and their one primary skill is sneak. I think that this is actually an amazing spread, especially if you really want to go into the stealthy assassin type thing, or even if you want to do a thief. I think the beautiful thing about Khajiit is the fact that they have one-handed and archery and sneak and pickpocket and alchemy. It really means you could do any stealth build you want. You could do one that crafts poisons and drops them into the pockets of people. If you don't know, there's a perk that lets you do damage to people by putting poisons in their pockets, which is kind of funny. You can do that. You can do an assassin, a dagger assassin, a bow assassin. You could do just a regular thief. You could do just a regular one-handed warrior who just so happens to sneak every so often. I think the Khajiit is a beautiful spread, especially early game. Granted, the Night Eye is pretty useless and the unarmed thing is pretty niche, but just the stat spread alone makes them amazing in stealthy situations, and even in non-stealthy situations. Having sneak at 25 is great, because I think it's sort of annoying to level up, so having that little boost is really, really nice. Alright, and the third and final race that is mainly focused around sneaking is the Bosmer, aka the Wood Elf. Wood Elves have a 50% built-in resistance to disease and poison, so it's basically the same thing as the Argonian, except instead of having water breathing, it's poison resistance, which may not sound insane at first, but it is quite good, because if you play on a high difficulty, Frostbite Spider Poison does a lot of damage. A lot of damage really fast. So having 50% resistance to poison is really, really sick. And of course the disease, which is, like I said before with the Argonians, extremely convenient and massively helpful. The Wood Elf ability that they start with is called Command Animal, which makes an animal an ally for 60 seconds. In this gameplay that might be showing right now, it's kind of funny. I used this on a mammoth to make these two mammoths fight each other, and then I helped making my mammoth win, and I got a free mammoth tusk just like that. I think that's a very interesting way of taking on a giant camp. Granted, I don't want to be super biased. I think Command Animal is good. It's definitely niche. It can also be nice if you're walking around and a saber cat just so happens to jump out at you. You can quickly use it and make him calm down. He doesn't necessarily have to fight for you, at least he calms down and you avoid that difficult situation. So, what is the stat spread of the Wood Elf? They start out with level 20 in light armor, sneak, lockpicking, pickpocket, and alchemy, very similar to the Khajiit, but their favorite skill at 25 is archery, which is phenomenal. As a matter of fact, the Wood Elf stat spread is almost identical to the Khajiit one, with the exception being, instead of having level 20 one-handed like the Khajiit do, the Wood Elves have level 20 light armor, which is good because it gives you a nice little boost to your defense, and a massive boost to your offense with archery, and of course it gives you all of the good things with alchemy, pickpocket, lockpicking, and sneak, like I mentioned with the Khajiit. So, that is the 3 sneak races. So now we have to make the decision. Based on the stat spread, the active effects, and the abilities, which one of these 3 is the best? So I'm not gonna lie, I can safely say it's not the Argonian. The Argonian is nice if you play as a non-stealth build. If you play as like a warrior, like a 2-handed heavy armor warrior, it's really good for the hist skin ability alone. But when you're playing as a sneak character, you really want to be playing to your advantages, and the Argonian's advantages are very mismatched and not combat oriented, so you really gotta kind of decide on your own. And no matter what you decide, you're gonna start off weak anyways, so it's why would you choose the Argonian if only not for aesthetics or the hist skin? In my opinion, it really comes down to the Khajiit and the Wood Elf. And I'm going to have to say that the Wood Elf wins ever so slightly. I would say that the Khajiit and the Wood Elf are almost tied. They're almost tied. Granted, the Wood Elf starts at level 15 one-handed. That's the only thing the Khajiit does better, I think. They start with 20 one-handed rather than just 15. But I think the boost to archery, light armor, and sneak, and pickpocket, that's great. Plus the 50% resistance to disease and poison, that's amazing. And the Command Animal, granted it's a niche ability, but it has practical use that can genuinely save you, and have a little bit of, cheese potential for mammoths. The Khajiit ability with the unarmed thing is niche, and it can help you in very specific situations, but it's only good early game, and you don't get XP for using it, so you're actually discouraged to use unarmed damage, as you don't level up. Night Vision is niche, and I almost never use it. I don't think it helps that much. So I'm gonna have to say, Wood Elf is the best sneak race. But we're going to quickly move on to the magic races. So starting out the magic races, we have the Breton. Bretons have the active effect of a permanent 25% resistance to every type of magic. Every type of magic does 25% less damage, which may not sound like a lot, but if you've played Skyrim to any extent, you understand the difficulty that mages have at higher levels. The amount of damage they can do is insane. Even just 25% less will save you dozens of HP worth of damage, and not even taking into account that Dragon's Fire Breath counts as magic damage, so dragons are 25% easier to fight, not including the bite attack that they use. The Breton's ability is called Dragon Skin. When you use it once a day, you can absorb 50% of magicka from any incoming spells for 60 seconds. So what that means is, if a mage shoots you with a firebolt that does 25 damage, it means you take 25 damage, but your magicka increases by 12. So that is really nice, because if you're fighting mages, it gives you basically an infinite supply of magicka, a basically infinite supply of magicka. It's actually, I would say, if you're fighting mages, it's basically like having Highborn, but better. And of course, it only lasts for 60 seconds, and you can only use it once a day. Still very good. So what's the Breton's stat spread? They start out with level 20 speech, Alchemy and Illusion, along with Restoration and Alteration. And their skill, that's 25, is Conjuration. So, something to note is the Breton is one of 3 races that starts with more than just the beginning Flames and Healing spell. Bretons start out with Conjure Familiar, which is a conjuration spell that lets you summon a little wolf to help you for 60 seconds. That's pretty good, especially if you want to really be into the necromancy or the summoning side of Skyrim. Having that conjuration immediately is really great. And of course, the fact that you have every other magic skill save for enchanting and destruction at 20 really helps. The speech thing, it's not super important. It can help you pass some early level speech checks, but let's be honest, it's pretty easy to get speech from 15 to 20. So that's not a really big advantage in my opinion. Same with alchemy, that's not a massive advantage, but it does kind of help a little bit. All in all, pretty fucking good. Alright, the second magic race is going to be the Dunmer, aka Dark Elf. Dark Elves have a built-in resistance to fire damage by 50%, which is absolutely amazing. Now, something to note is that it's not as good as it may seem. Like I said, Dragon's Fire Breath counts as magic, so you have a 50% resistance to Dragon's Fire Breath, but it's actually really bad. The reason is, the game is coded that the dragons kind of know that you have that resistance, and they never ever use fire damage on you. No dragon will ever use their fire breath against you. It will only be frost breath. And it's the exact opposite if you're a Nord. Nords have a 50% resistance to frost. You would never ever be attacked by a frost dragon. They will only use fire breath against you. So it's kind of a bad thing to be a Dunmer for the dragon side of things, because frost breath slows you down as also doing damage to you. So that's bad, but it is great for against regular mages. Having that resistance means you take a lot less damage, which means you die less often. That's obviously a very good thing. Also, the Dark Elves start with the Sparks spell, which is, you know, the novice lightning spell. That's not really a good thing, because no matter what, there's going to be a Sparks spell tomb in Helgen, so you're always going to be able to get it really early on, but they start with it from the get-go, so that's something to note, I suppose. Their active ability is Ancestor's Wrath, which you can use once a day to give yourself a Fire Cloak, basically, for free, which is great, because Fire Cloak is an adept level spell that costs a lot of magicka, and if you like using it, you gotta wait a bit, but if you're a Dark Elf, you get it straight off the rip, once a day, for free. Alright, and the Dark Elf stat spread is a little bit mismatched. They have a light armor of 20, a sneak of 20, alchemy, illusion, and alteration also at 20, but destruction at 25, which is just amazing. Like I said before, if you want to be really into the destruction side of things, having destruction at 25 is so amazing. It helps you so much, especially that what that means is you don't even have to use any destruction spells in the slightest, and you can already unlock Novice Destruction, Apprentice Destruction, and Destruction Dual Cast. All 3 procs at level like 4. That's amazing. Yeah, so the fact that they have light armor, I think, is interesting. It almost seems like Dark Elves aren't meant to be a pure mage. It's actually kind of funny. Dark Elves are kind of similar to the Argonian, and the fact that they're kind of a bastardization of a mage and a sneak type character. So if you want to do like a character who does a sword in one hand and fire in the other hand, Dunmer is the way to go, but not the best for a strictly mage playthrough. Alright, and the last magic race is going to be the Altmer, aka the High Elf. Their active effect is that they start with 150 magicka, as opposed to the standard 100. That is so immensely powerful, I can't even explain it. What that means is, as any other race, you have to be level 6, and you have to put every point into magicka just to match the abilities of a high elf at level 1. That is crazy, not even mentioning the extra 30 magicka you would get from the Novice Hood in Helgen. You can start out, you can have 200 magicka at level 3 if you really wanted to as a high elf. Also, something to sort of note, I didn't mention this about the Wood Elf, but if you're a Wood Elf or a High Elf, in the Thalmor Embassy quest, you can, pretend to be a Thalmor, and they will let you, walk by without having to kill them. That's something to note, not super important, but it's a fun bit of trivia, I suppose. The High Elf's ability is called Highborn, which lets you regenerate 25% of your maximum magicka per second for 65 seconds, which means if your magicka is 1,000, you would regenerate 250 magicka every second. Obviously, you're never gonna get that high, but you know, if you have 200 magicka, you would get 50 magicka a second, which is really nice, especially in the heat of combat. That helps you so much. It basically allows you to use really expensive spells at the beginning of a fight, like Stone Flesh, Flame Atronach, and like Bound Sword, and still have lots of magicka to use against mages with like your lightning spells, for example. Also, another fun bit of trivia: every race in Skyrim has a different running speed based on your height. It's not really noticeable, but your height does affect your speed in the game. Wood Elves run the slowest, High Elves run the fastest. Fun bit of trivia. You won't even notice it, but it's something to note, I guess. Anyways, the High Elf stat spread is level 20 Enchanting, Alteration, Restoration, Destruction, and Conjuration, and level 25 Illusion. That is beyond perfect for a mage. Granted, you don't have anything in alchemy, but do you really need that? I mean, that is definitely a slight disadvantage, but if you're doing a pure mage, this is the best stat spread you could possibly come close to hoping for. Also, High Elves start with the Fury spell. People and creatures up to level 6 would attack anything nearby for half a minute. Pretty cool and pretty useful if you want to do illusion early game. So I think it's extremely obvious. The Breton is kind of good, the Dunmer is kind of good, but the High Elf is just the choice to make if you want to do a pure mage. The extra magicka and the Highborn ability, that alone is the best out of any of them. But the stat spread really just nails it in the coffin. No matter what type of mage you want, no matter what type of mage you're playing, you have an advantage at the beginning of the game, including enchanting. If you want to enchant gauntlets and boots to give you extra magicka, you could do that too with extra ease. So yeah, the best mage race is High Elf by a lot. Alright, moving on to the last 4 races, which are the warrior races. I just want to quickly mention the Imperial is kind of a nothing race. The Imperial doesn't really seem to have a specific, you can't really define it as any one of them. So we're going to quickly talk about the Imperial just because it's such a strange race. Its active ability is that you have better luck finding money in like loot. So if you pick up a coin purse, you could find like, let's say a specific coin purse that has a chance of giving you like 7 to 14, you would be more likely to get like the 14 side of things rather than 7. Right, so any container that might have a little bit of money, you would find more money in it, which isn't that bad. I mean, that's a decent ability, but money in Skyrim, if you know what you're doing, is extremely common. It may as well grow on trees. Their ability is the Voice of the Emperor, which calms every nearby people for half a minute, but it's only people. It doesn't work on animals or anything, just people, and it calms them down for half a minute, which is pretty good. If you're in a very tight situation with like a bandit chief, that could definitely help. Well, you run off and heal a little bit, but I would never pick the Imperial for that ability or for the money thing. Neither of those things are so appealing to me. Anyways, the stat spread they have is level 20 heavy armor, block, one-handed, and destruction, restoration, and enchanting. So the Imperial is kind of like a mix between a mage and a warrior. So yeah, I mean, I guess that makes the Imperial kind of stand on its own. If you want to do a battle mage, like a one-handed, like a spell sword, spell on the left hand, sword into right, Imperial is probably a really great option. Heavy armor is good. Block is not really good, because why would you use block if you're going to be using magic and a sword? But one-handed is good. Destruction, restoration is very good. Yeah, restoration at level 20 is actually amazing, because that lets you start out with apprentice level restoration spells, which is really, really good. But yeah, I wouldn't really pick the Imperial, except for maybe just like role-playing purposes. I think it's kind of a nothing race, in my opinion. But anyways, moving on to the real warrior races. We're going to start off with the Nord. They have a built-in 50% resistance to frost. And so yeah, like I said, same thing with the Dark Elf. Dragons will never use frost breath against you, only fire breath, because they know you have that resistance. But it is so good against frost mages. In the Meridia's Beacon quest, at the end, Malakran, or whatever his name is, always uses this really powerful ice spell that is so difficult. I hate that, but as a Nord, it's easier, so That's amazing. The frost resistance helps you out at any stage in the game. It's just amazing. Their ability is Battle Cry. Nearby enemies are frightened for half a minute, and they run away. So, it's kind of good. Again, same thing as the Imperial. If you're in kind of a tight situation with a bandit chief or something, it definitely really helps. And instead of calming them down, and then, you know, when you hit them they get re-aggroed, with Battle Cry, they never attack you for half a minute. They're gonna run away, but they're gonna corner themselves. You can keep damaging them, and they're not gonna fight back. So it's pretty good. I usually forget to use it, but if you're actually more intelligent than me, which is pretty easy, but if you're more intelligent than me, then Battle Cry is actually quite good. The Nord's stat spread is level 20 in Smithing, Block, One-Handed, Light Armor, and Speech. And they have level 25 two-handed. So in my opinion, the way Bethesda seems to make you want to play as a Nord is a two-handed light armor warrior, which is pretty good, especially because with the level 20 smithing, you can improve on your armor even more, and you could pretty early on start smithing like a dwarven battle axe or something, and you know, you can just find decent light armor pretty much anywhere in the game. But I think a Nord would make for an amazing glass cannon, doing lots of damage extremely quickly, but also being sort of weak to physical damage, but also being very strong against magical damage. I think it's a great build to play as a warrior. Alright, next up we're going to talk about the Redguard, which is really good. I think the Redguard is going to be one of the contenders for the best race in the game in my opinion. They have a 50% poison resistance, which is really good against frostbite spiders, but almost nothing else, as I mentioned with the Wood Elf. No enemies really use poison. I'm pretty sure it's actually just frostbite spiders, but yeah, that's something to know, I guess. And their ability is Adrenaline Rush. Regenerate stamina 10 times faster for 60 seconds. This is so amazing. It doesn't matter what situation you're using this in, it's amazing. It allows you to do so much more power attacks. It allows you to shield bash so much more. It allows you to run more. It's so amazing. I can't tell you how many times this has been clutch for me. It's like having a vegetable soup without vegetable soup, and it's actually better than vegetable soup. The Redguard's stats is level 20 in Smithing, Block, Archery, and then Destruction and Alteration. And their level 25 is One-Handed, which also makes them kind of a non-committed warrior. The 25 One-Handed is amazing, but the fact that they don't really have... like, they have level 20 Block and level 20 in a few magic skills, which makes me kind of confused. You could be a one-handed shield and sword warrior, or you could be a spell sword. It's kind of, you know, up to you. The Adrenaline Rush is amazing, so you really do want to be a warrior with this build, but it doesn't seem to be a very committed, strictly warrior build, kind of like the Imperial, sort of. And the last race, the absolute last one, is the Orsimer, aka the Orc. They don't have any passive ability. The only thing that you could consider a passive ability, sort of like the High Elf and the Thalmor Embassy type situation, Orcs, they're always welcome in Orc strongholds, which is kind of cool, although maybe it's just me, but I don't think that that's useful. Like, yeah, there's unique stuff that goes on in them. There's only one stronghold that's actually useful, and it has a Daedric quest revolving around it. So being able to go inside of that, straight off the rip, without having to earn favor with the Orcs, that's amazing. But aside from that, it's not very useful. Now, the Orc's ability. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this ability is the best out of any of them. Just the abilities, it's the best. Berserker Rage. Take half damage, but do double damage for 60 seconds. The only catch is, you only do double damage for physical weapons. But let's be honest, no one's playing an Orc Mage or something, right? So you, for 60 seconds, you take half damage but do double damage. That's insane. I don't think I have to tell you that that's insane. You already know it. There's no situation that you would not want to use this. Any fighting situation, you can use it. Even if you don't need to. Just go overkill. Just destroy a bandit camp. It's so cool. The Orc's stat spread it's kind of like the Orc. The Orc is literally the warrior equivalent of the High Elf. The Orc's stat spread is 20 smithing, block, two-handed, one-handed, and enchanting, and their level 25 skill is heavy armor. So like I said with the High Elf, no matter what type of mage you are, it's the best choice. The ability suits it, the passive ability suits it, the stat spread suits it. The Orc is the exact fucking same. No matter what type of warrior you want to be, your stat spread suits it. Your Berserker Rage, it suits it. The active effect doesn't exist, that's whatever. The only exception is you don't have any investment into light armor. But if you want to be a light armor warrior, just be a Nord. But orcs, you have amazing heavy armor, you have amazing two-handed and one-handed and block. So if you want to be a shield and sword, you're good. A dual wielding one-handed, you're good. Two-handed, you're good. And enchanting is also good, because you can put on some nice, fire enchantment on a sick-ass battle axe too. So, for the warrior races, I'm going to have to say the orc wins by a lot. Even if you really want to use light armor, just be a Nord. And even if you don't want to be a Nord, because, being an orc really is objectively the best. Light armor at 15 isn't a massive disadvantage. Granted, your heavy armor is extremely encouraged and favored. It's not that big of a deal, let's be honest. So, with all of that said and done, what is my 3 best races? Well, if you want to play as a warrior build, the orc is the best. If you want to play as a magic build, the high elf is the best. If you want to play as a sneak build, the wood elf is the best. Like I said, just for fun, what is really the best race if you have to consider every type of playstyle? Like, what's the best race if you don't really know what you want to do, at the beginning? Well, first of all, if you don't really know what you want to do at the beginning of the game, and you just want to play and see how it ends up going, then it's not really a big deal. The initial stats aren't that important. Like, getting from 15 to 20 is pretty easy, and getting from 20 to 25, or even 15 to 20, it's pretty easy. It's not that massive of a deal. It only really affects you until, like, level 8 or something like that. If you don't really know what build you're going for at the beginning, I'd say Berserker Rage is great for everything. It's good for bows, it's good for sneak attacks, it's good for warriors, it's good for everything except mages. If you want to use magic, you should probably stick with the high elf or really Breton. There's no real wrong choice. Like, granted, every race is really good in their own way. So I'm not trying to say any race is bad or any are good. It's just these are the best because they outbeat the competition just like that, just a little bit, So, if you don't know what you want to do, just be an orc, or a Redguard, or an Argonian. I think those 3 are really good because of their passive abilities to regen stamina, do more damage, and regen health, respectively. Now that was a long video. That took me 40 minutes to do that voiceover. Holy shit. Thank you guys so much for watching the whole thing. It genuinely means a ton to me. Thanks you guys who drop a sub and a like, and as always, stay awesome. Peace out.